Welcome in, everybody, to a deep dive. That feels kind of like we're about to pull off a literary heist. We're getting a
Oh,
sneak
wow.
peek,
Yeah.
into the mind of an author before the rest of the world even knows his name. Joe King.
Ooh, exciting.
Yeah, we've got early drafts, notes, even some visuals,
Yeah.
all before his work hits the public.
Like a backstage pass to the whole creative process.
Exactly. So what's the mission for today? We're going to map out the themes and characters
Mm.
that pop up in his writing. We're going to dissect his style.
Okay.
What makes a Joe King story stand out?
Yeah.
And maybe even try to predict what kind of splash he's going to make when he finally does release these.
I am really intrigued by the way he blends realism with these fantastical elements. Even in these early pieces, it's a delicate balance.
Oh, yeah.
But he manages to ground the extraordinary in very relatable human struggles.
Absolutely. It's like he's taking these wild concepts and making you feel them on a gut level.
Yeah.
And speaking of gut level reactions, let's start with Bystander. This story throws you right into the deep end, with Rex, a guy dealing with a mental breakdown. That's, well, not your typical breakdown.
Mhm.
He's not just hearing voices. He's experiencing full-blown psychic intrusions.
Oh, wow.
And then there's this whole layer of cryptic license plates he keeps seeing. Each one, this jumble of numbers and letters that seem to hold some kind of hidden message. 001TME, 695DED. It's like a code waiting to be cracked.
It's more than just a code, though. It's foreshadowing.
Mm-hmm.
King uses these seemingly mundane details to hint at a much larger and darker conflict. It's as if Rex is stumbling upon pieces of a conspiracy, and the license plates are breadcrumbs leading him down this dangerous path.
And the way King describes it all, the prose is so vivid.
Yes.
So visceral. There's this scene where Rex is looking at his reflection in this grimy bathroom mirror. It's a simple action, but King turns it into this exploration of fractured identity, of self versus the world. You can practically feel the dampness of the room and the weight of Rex's despair.
It's interesting how that sense of internal struggle mirrors the external forces at play. Is Rex's breakdown causing these psychic phenomena? Or is he tapping into something larger, a collective unconscious that's unraveling? King blurs those lines in a way that really gets under your skin.
Yeah, and amidst all this chaos, we meet the Spectre.
Mm-hmm.
He's this calm, almost guiding voice in Rex's mind,
Yeah.
offering cryptic advice. It's like a lighthouse in a storm. But even his presence adds to the mystery.
Right.
One thing I loved is how King sprinkles these pop culture references. Throughout Bystander, Rex rents the X-Files, I Want to Believe, and there's a Frank Zappa quote that feels perfectly placed. It's almost jarring against this dark psychological backdrop. But I think it actually intensifies the weirdness.
I agree. By grounding the story in familiar territory, King makes those surreal elements even more unsettling. It's like he's saying this could happen anywhere, even in a world you recognize.
Oh, totally. Now, Sector keeps mentioning this mind's eye concept.
Yeah.
He says it's the key to understanding what's happening to Rex. It seems connected to psychic abilities. But I feel like King is hinting at something deeper here.
Yes. It's not just about psychic powers. I think mind's eye also refers to the act of reading itself. We as readers are using our own mind's eye to visualize this world, to experience Rex's journey alongside him.
That's a great point. It's like King is pulling us into the story, making us active participants in Rex's struggle. And it makes you wonder how much of what we perceive is shaped by our own mind's eye, by the stories we choose to believe.
Exactly. And that question becomes even more intriguing when you consider the other snippets we have from King's work, like Space Junk Yankee. It hints at a much larger universe, one where the lines between reality and perception are even more blurred.
Okay, so Space Junk Yankee is where things get really wild. We're talking about a talking cockroach named Gregor, a dystopian future where Earth is colonized by the European Union, and this ominous cult of Spade that seems to be pulling the strings.
Wow.
It's like he took all our anxieties by technology, social control, environmental collapse, and cranked them up to 11.
Yeah.
And yet there's this dark humor woven through it all. That makes it strangely captivating.
It's almost as if he's using satire and exaggeration to hold a mirror up to society, forcing us to confront our own fears and prejudices.
And the visuals he's created for this world are incredible. We've got the Space Junk Yankee itself, this rusty, cobbled-together spaceship, hurtling through the cosmos. Then there's this image of Curtis and Sarah, these two seemingly insignificant characters, piloting a massive robot that looks like a giant housefly.
The contrast is striking. You have this old-world aesthetic juxtaposed with futuristic technology, hinting at the tension between the past and the future, tradition and innovation. It's a visual representation of the themes that King explores in his writing.
And that tension is amplified by the presence of the Rushmore robot. It's this colossal mech built around Mount Rushmore, one of America's most iconic landmarks. To see it transformed into this weapon, this symbol of power, is both fascinating and unsettling. It makes you think about how our national identity can be manipulated, how symbols can be twisted to serve different agendas.
That question of who controls the narrative is central to King's work.
Yeah.
He's constantly challenging us to look beyond the surface, to question the stories we're told, and to consider who benefits from those stories.
Absolutely. And speaking of those who benefit and who control the narrative, that manipulation of narrative is especially apparent in the cult of Spade. They deify this figure, John Spade, who was actually responsible for the very policies that led to this dystopian world.
Wow, it's wild, right? They've twisted his legacy into something heroic, ignoring the reality of his actions.
It makes you think about how easily truth can be distorted, especially when fear and desperation are involved.
Yeah. But King doesn't just present the cult as a bunch of crazies, though. He gives us glimpses of their motivations, their longing for a simpler time, even if that past is built on a lie.
It humanizes them, even as their actions become increasingly dangerous. And the setting of Spade City itself reinforces that sense of unease. It's this hyper-controlled environment with constant surveillance, almost like a cautionary tale about the dangers of sacrificing freedom for security.
What's striking is how King blends those anxieties about societal control with a sharp wit. There's a subplot about the social justice warrior inquisitors. They're supposed to be upholding moral standards, but their methods are so over the top, so ridiculous it becomes a commentary on censorship and the dangers of ideological extremism.
Yeah, he's not afraid to poke fun at everyone, regardless of their beliefs. It's that balance of humor and social commentary that I think makes his work so compelling. It makes you think without feeling like you're being lectured.
Absolutely. It invites critical thinking rather than pushing a specific agenda.
Okay, so now that we've gotten a feel for these first two pieces, Bystander and Space Junk Yankee, I want to shift gears a little bit and talk about the role of music in King's work. It's not just background noise. It feels like a key to unlocking some of his bigger ideas.
It is everywhere.
Yeah.
It's everywhere.
Rex's obsession with his guitar in Bystander, the Cricket Symphony in This American Planet. Even in Space Junk Yankee, we have Doc, the leader of the Songbirds, who believes that music is this ultimate unifier. What do you make of it?
I think King is tapping into something primal, the way music can connect people across cultures and ideologies. It's a language that speaks to our emotions, bypassing the filters of logic and reason.
Right.
In a world that feels increasingly fragmented, music represents a source of unity and hope.
That makes so much sense. It's like music offers this glimpse of harmony in the midst of all the chaos. Hey, let's zoom out for a second. Looking at all these pieces together, the drafts, the notes, the visual concepts, what do you see as the core themes running through Joe King's work?
One overarching theme is the power of the mind. Not just in the literal sense of psychic abilities, but the power of perception resilience, the ability to find meaning and hope, even in the darkest circumstances.
Right, like even with Rex facing this mental breakdown, he's still searching for answers, trying to make sense of the chaos.
Exactly. And that ties into another major theme, the clash between technology and humanity.
Oh, yeah.
We see it in the European Union's control over Earth. The anxiety surrounding surveillance and artificial intelligence, it reflects our own unease about how technology is shaping our lives.
And how about the cults of Spade? They're technically low-tech, but they represent this blind faith in a leader, a rejection of progress in a way that feels almost regressive.
That's a great point. It speaks to a broader theme of searching for meaning and connection in a world that feels increasingly chaotic, whether it's through technology, ideology, or even music. King's characters are all trying to find their place to make sense of their reality.
So with all these big ideas he's exploring, what kind of impact do you think Joe King's work might have on readers once it's out in the world?
I think he has the potential to resonate with a wide audience, especially those who feel disillusioned or overwhelmed by the state of the world.
Yeah.
His blend of realism, fantasy, and humor creates a space where complex issues can be explored without feeling preachy or hopeless.
I agree. He's not shying away from the darkness. But there's always this glimmer of hope, this belief in the power of the human spirit to endure. to find beauty and connection even in the face of adversity.
And by weaving together pop culture references, mythological elements, and these thought-provoking themes, he's creating something truly unique. I wouldn't be surprised if he ends up defining a whole new genre.
Okay, before we move on to This American Planet, I want to circle back to the mind's eye for a minute. We touched on it earlier, but I think it deserves a deeper dive.
It's a concept that runs deeper than just psychic powers, isn't it? It's about the power of belief, of how the stories we consume shape our perception of reality.
And if our mind's eye can be influenced, even manipulated, what does that say about our ability to discern truth from fiction, to think critically about the narratives we're presented with?
It's a question that becomes increasingly relevant. In our information-saturated world, King is prompting us to be more discerning, to actively engage with the stories we encounter, rather than passively consuming them.
So in a way, he's giving us the tools to strengthen our own mind's eye, to become more aware of the forces that might be shaping our thoughts and beliefs.
Exactly. He's not just entertaining us, he's challenging us to become more critical thinkers, more conscious participants in the ongoing narrative of our lives.
I like that a lot. And now that we've explored these recurring ideas, let's turn our attention to King's fully realized novel, This American Planet. We have some excerpts and illustrations, which is a real treat.
Oh,
It's a post-apocalyptic world where Earth has been ravaged by environmental disaster. The European Union is in control. And there are these sprawling dystopian cities called Spade Cities. It's a much larger Kansas than Bystander. But King brings that same blend of realism and fantasy, humor and social commentary to this epic tale.
it's fascinating to see how he expands on those themes we've been discussing. The power of the mind takes on a whole new dimension in This American Planet, with characters exhibiting extraordinary abilities that are directly tied to their resilience and hope.
I'm particularly drawn to the Bug Runner chapter. We meet Curtis again, who we saw in those Space Chunk Yankee visuals. He's just trying to get by in this crumbling world. But he gets caught up in something much bigger than himself. King doesn't shy away from the harsh realities of this dystopian future, but he also infuses it with moments of humor, even absurdity. There's this scene where Curtis is convinced he's being watched by sentient beings while sneaking into a weed den. And then it turns out his cockroach friend, Gregor, is having the same paranoid thoughts.
It's that ability to find humor in the darkest of situations that makes King's characters so relatable,
Yeah.
even in the face of overwhelming odds. They retain their humanity, their capacity for hope, and even laughter.
And it's not just about laughs. Curtis's story also touches on themes of social inequality and the struggle for survival. In a system that seems rigged against you, he's a member of a marginalized group, forced to navigate a world that devalues him. And yet he finds ways to resist, to fight back, to find meaning in his existence.
And that image we saw earlier of Curtis piloting that giant robotic flymac takes on a whole new meaning in this context.
Right.
He's this tiny, seemingly insignificant individual at the controls of this powerful machine, representing the potential for even the most marginalized to challenge the status quo.
It's a powerful metaphor for the resilience of the human spirit, the ability to find strength and agency even in the most oppressive circumstances.
And it connects back to the theme of the mind's eye. Curtis, despite being labeled as insignificant, possesses a unique perspective, a way of seeing the world, that allows him to navigate its complexities and ultimately challenge the powers that be.
It makes you wonder if King is suggesting the true power lies not in brute force or technological superiority, but in our ability to perceive, to adapt, to imagine alternatives to the narratives that are imposed upon us.
It's a powerful message, especially in a world that often feels defined by those in control, those who hold the reins of technology, resources, and information.
And speaking of those in control, I'm curious to delve deeper into the European Union's role in This American Planet. They're presented as this dominant force, the ones who hold the keys to Earth's fate. What do you think King is trying to say about power dynamics, about the legacy of colonialism, and the struggle for self-determination in this new world order?
The European Union represents a complex force in King's narrative. They are, on one hand, the architects of a new world order, a system designed to manage a planet on the brink of collapse. However, their methods are often portrayed as heavy-handed, bureaucratic, and at times even oppressive.
Their control over resources, technology, and information creates a stark divide between those who benefit from their rule and those who are marginalized.
It's like he's exploring the complexities of power, showing how even those with good intentions can perpetuate systems of control that ultimately benefit a select few.
Exactly. And it forces us to question who gets to define progress, who determines the fate of humanity, and whether a single centralized power structure can truly address the diverse needs and aspirations of a global population.
That tension between centralized control and individual agency is palpable throughout the story. And it's not just about the European Union. The cult of Spade represents another form of control, one based on blind faith and a rejection of progress.
It's almost like King is saying that the true threat to humanity isn't just external forces, but our own willingness to surrender our critical thinking, our individual agency to those who promise easy answers, or a return to a glorified past. And then there's the resistance, those who are fighting back against both the European Union and the cult of Spade. They represent a different vision for the future, one based on self-reliance, community, and a belief in the power of the human spirit to overcome even the most daunting challenges.
The resistance is where we see the themes of hope and resilience most clearly embodied. They are the underdogs, the ones fighting for a better world despite the odds stacked against them.
Their stories remind us that even in the darkest of times, there will always be those who refuse to give up, who believe in the possibility of a different future.
And their struggle highlights the importance of individual action, of coming together to challenge systems of oppression and create a more just and equitable world.
It's inspiring to see those glimmers of hope amidst the darkness. It makes you believe that even in a post-apocalyptic world, humanity can find a way to rebuild, to adapt, to create something new and meaningful.
And it all comes back to the power of the mind's eye, that ability to imagine a different reality, to envision a future beyond the constraints of the present.
It's a reminder that even when the world around us seems bleak, we always have the power to choose how we perceive it, how we respond to it, and ultimately, how we shape the narrative of our own lives and the lives of those around us. So it feels like Joe King is giving us a toolkit for navigating a world that's increasingly complex and uncertain. He's not offering easy answers, but he is encouraging us to ask the right questions, to challenge assumptions, and to use our mind's eye to envision a better future.
And that's what makes his work so compelling. He's not just telling stories, he's inviting us to be active participants in the creative process, to engage with these ideas and find our own interpretations.
I love that. It's like he's creating a dialogue with the reader, saying, here are my thoughts, now what are yours?
Exactly. And that's the power of great art. It doesn't just entertain, it provokes and inspires. It challenges us to think differently about ourselves and the world around us.
So as we sort of wrap up this first part of our deep dive into Joe King's work, I'm curious to hear what stood out to you the most. Was there a particular theme, character, or image that really resonated with you?
I think what struck me is the recurring motif of music. It's more than just a stylistic choice. It feels like a symbol of hope connection and the enduring power of the human spirit. Even in these dystopian settings, music offers a glimpse of beauty, a reminder that even in the darkest of times, we can find solace and unity through shared experiences.
That's such a great observation. It ties back to that idea of the mind's eye, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Music can transport us, shift our perspective, and even inspire us to create something new. It's a powerful force, and I think King understands that on a deep level.
He does. He does.
All right, so we've explored the gritty realism of Bystander. We ventured into the wild world of Space Junk Yankee, and we've begun to delve into the epic scope of This American Planet. And through it all, we've glimpsed this unique vision of Joe King, an author who's asking big questions, pushing boundaries, and inviting us to join him on this journey of discovery.
He's a writer to watch, that's for sure. I have a feeling we'll be hearing a lot more from Joe King in the years to come.
I have no doubt about that. And for our listeners who are just as intrigued as we are, keep an eye out for his work. When it hits the shelves, you won't be disappointed. And before we move on to part two, I want to leave you with this thought. Joe King's stories remind us that even in a world that often feels chaotic and overwhelming, we still have the power to choose how we perceive it, how we respond to it, and ultimately, how we shape the narrative of our own lives. So go out there, explore, create, and keep those mind's eyes open. Who knows what amazing things you'll discover. We'll be back with part two soon.
So we were talking about how Curtis is trying to make it in this world, and he gets caught up in something much bigger than himself.
Right, and he ends up having to face some pretty tough choices. But the way King writes about it, it's like you're right there with Curtis, experiencing all the danger and uncertainty alongside him.
And those moments of humor you mentioned earlier, they really shine through in this chapters. Like even in this bleak world, King finds a way to remind us that there's still room for laughter and absurdity.
Totally. Like that scene with Doug's vomit. I won't spoil it for the listeners, but it's both hilarious and kind of gross. But it also serves a purpose. It reveals something about Curtis's character. His ability to find humor even in the most disgusting situations.
It speaks to his resilience, his ability to adapt to whatever life throws at him.
Exactly. And that resilience is something that's really important in a world like the one King has created.
It's a world where you have to be tough, you have to be resourceful, you have to be able to laugh at the absurdity of it all, just to keep going.
And Curtis embodies all of those qualities. He's like the ultimate survivor, but he's also a deeply flawed character.
Yeah.
He makes mistakes, he's impulsive, and that makes him even more relatable.
It makes him human.
Yeah, he's not some superhero. He's just a guy trying to do the best he can in a world that's gone mad.
And that struggle to find your place in a chaotic world, I think that's something a lot of people can relate to.
Oh, for sure. Especially these days.
So much is changing so quickly, it's easy to feel lost and overwhelmed.
Totally. And I think that's why stories like This American Planet are so important. They offer a way to process those feelings, to explore those anxieties in a safe space.
They give us a framework for understanding the world around us, even when that world feels like it's falling apart.
Exactly. And they remind us that we're not alone, that other people are going through similar struggles.
And that there's still hope, even in the darkest of times.
Speaking of hope, I'm curious to hear your thoughts on the ending of This American Planet. Without giving too much away, it's both hopeful and kind of bittersweet.
It is. It leaves you with the sense that the fight is never truly over,
Right.
that there will always be challenges to overcome, but that the human spirit is capable of enduring, of finding a way forward.
I love that King doesn't offer any easy solutions. He doesn't tie everything up in a neat little bow.
It's a reflection of life itself.
Yeah.
Life is messy and unpredictable, and there are no guarantees.
But there's beauty in that uncertainty.
There's a sense of possibility.
And I think King captures that perfectly.
He leaves us with a feeling that anything is possible, that the future is still unwritten.
And that's a powerful message, especially for those who might be feeling lost or discouraged.
It's a reminder that we have the power to shape our own destiny, to create a world that's more just and equitable,
And to never give up hope.
even when the odds seem stacked against us.
It's interesting how King seems to be drawing parallels between these different forms of control. The European Union with its technology and bureaucracy, and then the cult of Spade with its blind faith and rejection of progress.
It's like he's showing us that control can manifest in many different ways. But ultimately, it all boils down to a power imbalance, to one group or ideology imposing its will on others.
And those who resist are the ones who refuse to conform, who challenge those power structures, and try to create a better world for themselves and those around them.
It's a reminder that even in the face of overwhelming odds, the human spirit can still find a way to fight back, to resist, to create.
And I think that's one of the most hopeful aspects of King's work. Even in these dystopian worlds he's created, there's always a sense that change is possible.
That the future is not predetermined, that we have a role to play in shaping it.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into Joe King's work, I'm curious to hear your final thoughts. What do you think listeners should take away from this exploration of his writing?
I think King is offering us a powerful lens through which to view our own world. He's asking us to question the narratives we're told, to be critical of those in power, and to never stop fighting for a better future.
That's a great point. He's not just entertaining us, he's challenging us to think critically about the world around us and to consider how we can make a difference.
And he's doing it all with wit humor and a deep understanding of the human condition.
So for our listeners out there, if you're looking for an author who's pushing boundaries, asking tough questions, and creating stories that will stay with you long after you finish reading them, then Joe King is definitely an author to watch.
I couldn't agree more.
Well, that's all the time we have for today's deep dive. Thanks for joining us on this journey into the mind of Joe King. And until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep those mind's eyes open.